President Biden pushing Build Back Better again. In Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger's district, that is Central Virginia, that is a hotly contested district. Many Dems have chosen not to show up when the president comes in town. Ask Stacey Abrams about that in Georgia. Karl Rove is here to react on all this. Hello, Karl. Hello, you. You got a few whiteboards. Let me just show you what we have right here. Approval, disapproval. He's at 54% disapprove in Monmouth. What do you have there, sir, in Austin? Let's start there.
Well, remember, as you said, this is a hotly contested congressional district, so it probably looks like the country as a whole. We don't have numbers from this district, but we got national numbers, and you're right. Overall approval for Biden, 40-54 in Real Clear Politics. On the economy, 38 approve, 56 disapprove on the economy. Immigration, 33-56. Foreign policy, 37-53. COVID, 44-52. The new ABC poll asks on approval, disapproval on inflation, 29-69 disapprove. On crime, 34-64 disapprove. So my suspicion is Spanberger's one of two minds. Either I want to get this out of the way early so he never comes back to my district before the election again, or maybe she didn't have a choice on it and they simply said, we're coming. But it's not good politically for her to be standing up there next to President Biden in a district that is clearly going to be a battleground.
You know, the latter is actually quite possible because remember, President Biden has said he wants to get back out on the road a little bit more, but they don't want to travel too far. So going down to Richmond is not that heavy a lift. President Obama is going to come speak to the House Democratic retreat. Do you think that there will be a lot of nostalgia in the room?
You know, I bet not. I mean, because President Obama had a testy relationship with Congress. He basically, particularly when it came to the House, just basically did talk to the leadership and not the rank and file. I think it's a rather odd request by Speaker Pelosi to have the former president come. But, you know, in a way, it's not helpful from the economic perspective. If you take a look at Gallup, economic confidence, only 2% of the American people think the economy is good today, is excellent today, 21 good. So the positive side of the equation, 23% think the economy is good. Only fair, 40%, poor, 37%. So the negative side of the equation is 77. By comparison, January of 2020, before we got into the lockdown and COVID hit, it was 62% positive, 38% negative under President Trump. So maybe they're trying to get the nostalgia of, oh, geez, President Obama, the economy was better. But the more that they talk about the past, the more people will recognize, I suspect, that, you know, we're in a rough patch today. And we're in a rough patch because of inflation, because people are deeply concerned about rising prices at the grocery store and the gas pump. And I don't think the administration's got a handle on that at all. They think it's transitory. We're likely to see inflation. It's now hit a 40-year high the last month. We're likely to see that issue continue to be front and center.
I want to ask you about that in a moment.
Administration.
You made a whiteboard about inflation, but before we get to that, do you have a theory as to why President Obama and President Biden have not been in the same room for a year? They're together almost every day for 8 years. Can you help us understand why that is within that relationship?
It is mystifying, isn't it? Look, I was taken with the press in March, April, May, and June of last year when President Biden was out there talking about Build Back Better and my American Rescue Plan, and here's my grandiose agenda and what's going to transform the country. It was like they loved, White House aides were telling the press, we like it that he's being seen as more transformational than President Obama. I think during 8 years of President Obama and Vice President Biden, I think there was tension between the two staffs, the staffs of the president and the staffs of the vice president. And now all of those people who were the staff of the vice president, Ron Klain et al., are now the staff of the president. And I think they like the idea of him being seen as more transformational, more aggressive, more liberal, more in tune with the left of the Democratic Party, trying to make big transformational changes than President Obama did.
Do you think that kind of tension exists between this current West Wing staff and the current vice president's staff?
I think there's tension, but I think it might be for a different reason. Yeah. It might be because they think she's been an utter disaster on every major assignment that they have given her, and she's a very poor public face for them. And every time they hear that cackle that she gives off when she gets into trouble, her tell, I suspect there are a lot of wincing in the West Wing.
Well, move to Tennessee. Jim Cooper's a Democrat from that state. He had an interesting quote with the local newspaper in Nashville. He said their strategy is blind hope, talking about Republicans. Many of the folks you're probably listening to have probably never visited these counties. They're not kin to these folks. It's important to be in communication with the constituents, not to be their boss. We've got to get this formula right. Here's the critical line. The Democratic Party in Tennessee is basically facing extinction. And that's a message to his colleagues. How do you read that?
Well, one minor correction. You said at the beginning that he was addressing Republicans. He was addressing Democrats, saying Democrats are losing rural Tennessee.
Sorry.
Yeah, that they're losing rural Tennessee and rural America because they don't talk to people in rural America, and they don't understand people in rural America. And I think he's absolutely right. We see this, for example, in Texas, where we just had a major endorsement of by the leaders of the Progressive Caucus of a couple of Democrats for candidates for Congress who are anti-energy and pro-Green New Deal in places that are heavily energy and heavily agriculture, and that's not the way to go about getting their votes. So. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. The Democrats have a huge problem in rural America, which also affects their standing in small-town America and in suburban America, because those same kind of people who believe that they're not being listened to and that the Democratic Party is controlled by elites who are far to the left and look down their nose at people like they are is a real problem for the Democrats.
Thank you, Karl.
Good to see you as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.